Well, hello and welcome into another edition of Bronco Chat. I'm David Gentili with Santa Clara Athletics, joined by Bronco baseball alum, big league pitcher, and 2020 World Series champ with the Los Angeles Dodgers, Mitch White. Mitch, great to see you again. It's been a good couple of months, man. How's everything going for you?
Everything's been great. Good to see you too. It's been kind of a crazy ride, but it's been fun.
Last couple of months, you've made your major league debut, got your first big league win, and then got to be down on the field when the Dodgers won the World Series. A lot of big career events kind of stacked on top of each other. How do you describe this really kind of jam-packed ride for you as of late?
I mean, yeah, for real. It was like bang, 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 bang. I don't really have a good description for it because it's unlike anything else. I mean, beyond just the whole first big league stuff, it was also we were in a bubble. So I was stuck in a hotel for 2 months, just going baseball, hotel, baseball, just back and forth. So it's really hard to describe, but I guess just amazing and crazy and awesome kind of will suffice.
Yeah, a lot of good moments at the end of an unprecedented and very interesting season. I kind of want to, walk the fans through what 2020 has been like for you. Pre-pandemic, you were set up to go to Oklahoma City, Dodgers affiliate, and then the news comes in about COVID and everything kind of changes. What's the early reaction for you like, and what kind of news are you waiting on when you first found out that, okay, things are going to be different, not going to be scheduled as normal this year?
Yeah, I mean, for about a month or so after spring training, everyone left. I kind of stayed around, stayed put, like maybe this will be quick, or at least I have access to facilities in Arizona, blah, blah. But at a certain point, I was like, all right, that's not going to work out. So I flew home, lived with my parents for a couple months, just kind of waiting to hear something. But obviously, it was 2, 3 months, whatever, of nothing. And I was working out, trying to do whatever I could. Like I was with Stevie Berman working out at his little league field, throwing bullpens, throwing live BPs, trying to stay ready. And then finally the call came and I was like, all right, we need you in 2, 3 days. Come down to LA. And bang, then it went.
So you get the call to come down to LA and you're part of the alternate site group for the Dodgers. On a day-to-day basis, once the league gets going, once you're in season, how does that compare to what you've experienced in a normal season in the minor leagues?
I'd say the atmosphere and all that was probably closer to the Saratoga Little League than to actual games in general. But I mean, it was a great time to work on some stuff. Just tinkering a little bit here and there with mechanics and delivery, working on the game planning side of things, like getting hitters out and attacking their weaknesses. But it just took a little extra to get myself going, like to get that little edge. And it was definitely a learning experience doing that because, like we said, unprecedented times, crazy, weird, whatever situation. But USC was definitely a good learning experience.
And what kinds of things are you doing on a day-to-day basis in that bubble? Are we talking simulated games, or are you trying to keep it similar to what you would experience when you're playing competitive games against other squads?
Yeah, so we'd probably play about 5 games, let's say, out of the week. And some days we throw 3 innings, some days we throw 7 innings. It just kind of depended on keeping the starting pitchers in their rotation. So I was on a 6-day rotation, and I just kind of stick with that. And then we'd play our games. The hitters would do their normal thing every day, take ground balls, take BP, hit in the cage, whatever they needed. So it was run just like a minor league season, just obviously a little more, little smaller.
So no minor league baseball in 2020. So that created a scenario where you have a taxi squad, small group of guys that travels with the big league squad. Essentially, the guys normally in AA, AAA that would be getting ready to be called up if they needed somebody in a pinch. What was your experience like with this taxi squad group?
It was great. I mean, it was pretty fun to be able to travel on the road with the big league team, kind of be around everyone, although it wasn't necessarily on the active roster. But the way it works is whenever we go on the road, the big league team goes on the road, say to Arizona, They're like, all right, well, we need 5 guys to come out just in case. So they'd have like an extra catcher, a couple extra pitchers, an outfielder, infielder, just a good mix to fill in for if anything happened. And so a lot of times for the pitchers, it was like, all right, well, we burnt so and so and so and so, so they're good for a while. How about we bring on Mitch or a couple other guys that were on hand? And that's kind of how it works, and that's how I ended up getting my opportunity.
Yeah, the first game for you, the big league debut in Texas back on August 28th. It's kind of an interesting middle ground, like you talked about. You find out day of if you're activated and ready to go. So when you find out that, all right, hey, Mitch, get hot. It's about to be your time. You know, what's going through your head? Do you have a chance to take a moment to kind of, realize how awesome of a thing this is for you to be able to make your big league debut?
Not really. I was more like blackout, just go, 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 go. I couldn't really think straight. But I mean, leading up to that point, I'd been on the taxi squad and then I'd been activated a couple times, excuse me. For example, in like San Francisco, there was a chance I would have thrown, which would have been, the storybook, whatever, starting point for me growing up a Giants fan. But that unfortunately didn't happen, besides the point. But it was just, you don't really think about it like that in terms of the grand scale. It's just like, all right, I got to get this guy out and this guy out, this guy out. Boom. There were definitely some nerves involved, but I ended up getting through it all right, unscathed. So.
Oh, you mentioned that you kind of black out a little bit. So what do you remember from that first experience going up against the Rangers?
I remember the strikeout. That was my first strikeout. It was a 3-2 slider down the end of Shin Soo Choo. That was pretty cool. And he's also a Korean guy, and my mom is Korean, so that was not lost upon a lot of the family back home or here, for that matter. I mean, everyone loved it that he was a Korean guy for whatever reason.
Was it interesting or strange at all that your last appearance in a competitive game prior to that was August of last season? So you go a year between pitching in an actual game situation. And oh, by the way, now you're back on and it's your big league debut.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little weird. I mean, like I said, the atmosphere at USC wasn't electric. It's tough without fans, obviously. But at the same time, I mean, it didn't really faze me personally because it was my debut. It was like the adrenaline was there. I was going to go no matter what. That makes up for a lot of other things going on. Maybe talk to one of the older guys who's been around. Might have been a little bit of a different story for them, I'd say. But for me, I mean, it didn't really matter that it was whatever a year ago. It just kind of, you go when you're called, you just kind of get up and go and throw. So
you got to get back on the mound September 18th, got the win in Colorado, first big league victory for you. But it was a staff game, so it's not a situation where you necessarily knew that you were in line for that going in. So when did you find out that you were going to get the win for that game?
Yeah, it was such a weird situation because we threw the whole pen. I got lucky, I guess. I don't know. I threw 2 innings, got out, and I think it was Max Muncy, the first baseman, got the last out and tossed me the ball. I didn't even realize. And then I come inside, and one of our guys, like the PR guy, is like, "Hey, that was your first win. Congrats. You should keep that." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna keep that. We'll bring that home and save that for my mom."
So fast forward, great playoff run for the Dodgers, culminating in the World Series. As a guy who's a part of that bubble, where are you while the World Series is taking place?
One of 3 places. The hotel, if I was feeling lazy on a given day. They had a suite. MLB provided us a taxi squad suite, which is pretty awesome. And I also would sometimes be in the weight room downstairs, out of the way of the clubhouse, so I'm not like seeing the guys go in and out, but still with the staff there and then a couple other guys. Just kind of mix it up, whatever felt right on a given day, and roll with it.
So you get to be there with the group, and tell me about the moments leading up to the end of Game 6 and what the celebration was like for you afterward.
Yeah, game 6 was a sweet night. So we were all up there, actually, all the taxi squad, whatever, 10 guys, I don't remember. And it was about the 7th or the 8th when it was kind of like, all right, well, we got the momentum, we're winning. Let's bring these guys down. So we kind of snuck down into the clubhouse. Kind of got changed into clothes, like more baseball clothes, and creeped up behind the dugout. So we were looking in the dugout up the tunnel. Couldn't actually see the field, but we knew what was going on. It was Julio was dominating. It was nasty. The only two people I could see were Bob Guerin, our bench coach, and Doc Dave Roberts, the manager. And it was like I still kind of have that little picture snapshot of that little tunnel. I just see Doc throw his hands up and start screaming, and then those two hug, and then everyone just goes crazy. It was chaos. And we were sitting back in the tunnel, and it was like, that's the team right there. I don't really know. Should we go up there? Should we stay? Everyone's rushing the field. Maybe we'll give it a second. And then the taxi squad as a unit, just strength in numbers, kind of moved up together and awkwardly hung out there for a little bit and took some pictures and hung out. It was great.
I know it's a meaningful family connection for your team, specifically to be a member of the Dodgers, and that goes back to your grandfather. Tell me about kind of the connection you had with him and how that related to baseball.
Yeah, so personally, unfortunately, we didn't have the closest connection. Towards the end of his life, it was tough to talk, for him to talk. But I think it was really big for my uncle, who now he actually had a chance to come out to the game in Texas and was loving it. Been to the World Series with the Dodgers with him before. He's a super fan, diehard. And a lot of that started with when he was young. He got into, I don't know exactly who his favorite guys were, but would have been, the 80s. And my grandpa and him had a little father-son bonding over that. So they became super close, and that's why my grandpa was a super fan for the Dodgers. And then growing up, for me and him, it was always like he'd always be there. He'd always be cheering in the stands. He'd be like grunting, screaming, whatever, and it'd be like all-star little league stuff. Or unfortunately, not at Santa Clara so much. But when we were young, he loved coming out to the games and watching. So I think it would have meant a lot to him for sure to have seen that and to have been around it.
So with making your debut, getting the win, the Dodgers winning the World Series, with all of that throughout, is it one of those classic phone blowing up kind of situations where you're hearing from everybody and able to reconnect with people?
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of like just reliving the moment over and over and over. I was up pretty late trying to respond to the Instagram DMs and the texts and stuff, which is awesome. I mean, talking to people I haven't talked to since Little League or high school or whatever it was. It was unfortunate because of COVID, obviously on the road, we were stuck in the hotel. It was just me alone in a hotel room, sitting on my phone, trying to keep up with all the endless supply of text.
Kind of put a bow on 2020. We talked a lot about your experience and the team, but specifically, I want to ask you, how do you feel like you've come along as a pitcher? How have you developed in this most unusual season?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. Is like, if I'm not going to be competing in these games that matter necessarily, I want to tinker. I want to develop some stuff and get to a point where next year I'm ready to roll. And so I made some strides in terms of my delivery and my arm action. In terms of delivery, it was kind of creating a little rhythm, a little toe tap, to be more consistent, and then shorten up the arm a little bit, which is kind of the new thing for a lot of people. And I don't know, it was great. So it helped my fastball get a little more play up here, throw the curveball a little harder and sharper, get a little more bite. And then the slider too. Slider was a lot more consistent. Instead of spinning it, I was kind of get a little more downward sharp bite. So those were in terms of like tangible mechanical improvements, those are the two big things. And then just being around the team was huge. Just kind of learning from those guys who've been around for a while and they know so much. And the coaching staff, like the assistant pitching coach for us is Connor McGinnis. He's a genius. So I was able to work with him every day, which was great. Not just in terms of mechanics and all that, but also game planning and just understanding the finer side of things, the mental side, whatever it is. And that was awesome to be around.
And we talked about this a little bit before we started the interview, but you mentioned, you stick around with pods of guys based on what your role is on the team, what your position is, and whatnot. Any particular guys that you've been able to gel with on the big league club or pick their brains and learn from these guys as part of your development?
For sure. I mean, for me, I was always, when I was on the taxi squad, I'd be stretching and throwing and working out with the bullpen guys. So I was probably closest with them in terms of just being around them. And everyone across the board was awesome and good to me and good to all the taxi guys. Like there was no hierarchy or whatever. Obviously there was a hierarchy. I shouldn't say that, but it's never like in your face, whatever. But I'd say in terms of specific guys, I don't know, Ross Stripling before he was unfortunately traded. He was a good mentor for me, especially in spring training. I spent a lot of time with like Joe Kelly, just listening to crazy stories in the bullpen. That was awesome. Blake Trinan's another guy in the bullpen. He was a great dude, awesome guy. But it's just everybody. I mean, it's tough to single out a bunch of people, but the team was awesome.
I want to talk about the last couple seasons, talk about minor league baseball a little bit. You've come up, and this would have been now, well, this is your 5th year now in pro ball, 4 years with the traditional minor league experience. Can you give us just kind of a quick snapshot of the transition to professional baseball and how these 5 years have gone for you?
Yeah. So in 16, I was at Santa Clara, drafted. Went out to Arizona for like, it's basically like before they send everyone out. I don't even know what they call it. Whatever. You go out there, threw in a couple innings, got sent out with the draft guys. I went out to the Great Lakes Loons in Midland, Michigan, small town Michigan. It's probably about what you'd imagine. Pitched pretty well. By the end of the year, right before playoffs, I got sent to Rancho Cucamonga in SoCal. Pitched for them in the playoffs a little bit, hung around, whatever. Went back for the off season at Santa Clara, which would have been my senior year. That was a great year. And then 17, spring training, ended up going to Rancho, starting there. End up breaking my toe about a month or two into the season. So I go back to Arizona for rehab. Then I come back to Tulsa. So Tulsa's our AA, the Drillers. Finish up the season there. We end up winning the championship. Great year. 18, that off season, I herniated a disc in my back. And then come back in 18, a little slow, start late, end up in Tulsa and stay there the whole year. And that is the year we won the championship. Sorry, in 17 we lost. And 18 was a great year. Not me personally, but for the team and everyone around us, it was a great bunch of guys. Then I come back in 19 and I pitched pretty well in Tulsa, get moved up after a month, end up in OKC. Struggle with some blister issues, didn't pitch super well, kind of ended on a high note. And then I ended up in 2020 in USC and a little bit in LA. So that's like the quick snapshot. Maybe not super quick, but.
Well, it always takes a special squad to be able to win a championship. Dive in on that 2018 team, and you mentioned it was a special year for that group. What was it that made it that way?
I think it was a good group of guys more than anything. I mean, we were talented, obviously, but there's a lot of talented teams I've been on in the minor leagues. For the Dodgers, it's incredible. But I mean, I just remember vividly, like, living during playoffs, living in the visiting coach's locker room, playing video games till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and then walking on over to the other side and getting ready to play a game. It was fun, and then those bus trips, you get to know the towns you visit a lot. Like the bus trips to Springfield is a fun place, Springfield, Missouri, down to Frisco, Texas. And then the long ones. I mean, Frisco's a pretty long one. There's a long one to like Corpus Christi and San Antonio. Like those are just crazy, insane bus trips, but we make them fun. I mean, you can't be doing much for 13 hours straight, but for the first half of that, it's fun. And that was really what stood out for me. And then obviously we ended up winning it, which was just icing on the cake for sure. But I think it would have been memorable regardless of the championship.
So with your home base for a while being Tulsa, Oklahoma City, having grown up in California and San Jose, how do summers out there compare to summers out here?
You know, it's pretty insane. I never had to deal with humidity, but in places like Oklahoma and Corpus Christi, Texas is the one that sticks out. It's literally 100 degrees and 100% humidity. It feels like every day. I mean, I don't know, but like you walk out the hotel and all the windows are fogged over because it's so humid and you just are immediately sweating compared to what I'm used to, which I mean, it gets up to the hundreds sometimes in San Jose, but I mean, it's just dry. It's not nearly as bad. It was a nightmare out there. I didn't miss that for sure.
Well, I want to wrap up by talking about now some Santa Clara memories. And the first one for you, you spent 3 seasons with the Broncos. When did you first get a sense that you had a chance of being taken pretty high in that 2016 draft?
It really wasn't until the end. I mean, I knew there was interest, and it was more like maybe top 10. But kind of the last little week or so, it happened real fast. And I was actually draft night. The first 2 rounds were take place on the first day, and so I was like, probably not going to happen. So I was just playing video games with one of my buddies, and we were just sitting there, and I get a call from the Dodgers or my agent. I don't remember which one, but it was like, "Hey, you should turn on the TV. Something's happening." And I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." Well, I turned on the TV, and it was like, "Hey, would you go to the Dodgers in the second round?" And I was like, yeah, well, I'm good with that." And then I watched it happen literally 30 seconds later on the TV, and then all hell broke loose. It was wild, but it was a fun night. But yeah, that was just kind of crazy. I didn't expect it.
Oh, yeah, kind of a culmination of a really good season. You stepped into that starting role. What do you remember about your progression in that redshirt sophomore season in 2016?
I think if I remember right, it started well, and then I kind of went through a lull. But I think the biggest thing that helped me get out of that, and kind of early on in the season, I was throwing decently hard, but not super hard. And I think the biggest thing that helped me was I was working with our strength coach at the time, who at the time was Shane Davenport. He's a great dude. Um, and I just kind of got stronger and stronger as the year progressed. And slowly that started to work its way into my velos and just stuff overall. And once that kind of ticked up as the season went on, and I got a better feel for starting. That was my first year starting. I kind of got a better feel for what I needed to do. That's when things kind of started to pick up, and it definitely helped a lot.
How fun was it to pitch in the conference that year? Because I remember calling games, and it seemed like every Friday night, and every time you're pitching, it's some kind of titanic matchup, like AJ Puckett at Pepperdine, who went also in the second round that year. There's a lot of guys. Think about Mike Rucker at BYU, Brandon Bailey with Gonzaga, JD Busfield at LMU was really good. Max Coons, who had a tremendous year as a closer for Santa Clara, got drafted, and also a guy in Tony Gonsolin, who's now pitching for the Dodgers as well. Just what do you remember about being in a league with a lot of good arms and a lot of good pitching matchups?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun every Friday night. The thing is, I don't even remember thinking that. Like, I don't think it really crossed my mind. I was just kind of throwing. But in Corbin Burns, too, who's pitching for the Brewers now, he's nasty. We had a lot of talent sneakily. I don't know how in the WCC. It was insane. It was awesome to see. And it made it fun, too, because there's a lot of scouts at all the games for guys like the Burns and the AJ's the stud. And Busfield and whatever, all those guys kind of brought it out, and then everyone kind of just built up. The energy kind of got built up, and I'm like, there's a little buzz around the WCC that year, which was really nice. It was really fun, and everyone from that draft is still doing pretty well for the most part, that I've at least kept in contact with, which is awesome to see.
In terms of playing with the Broncos, do you have a particular favorite memory on the field or game, something that you look back on now and say, yeah, no, that was a pretty special one?
Um, I'd say when we dogpiled in my freshman year. I wasn't even playing. I was just sitting in the stands with a radar gun, but that was fun. In terms of like the team wins, that was our best year, I think, in terms of just putting it all together. We might have had more talented teams later in the years, but we never had the success like we did my first year, which was awesome to be a part of. You know, similar to the Dodgers this year. I didn't know to do anything, but we had a little success, and that was great.
Yeah, I think if you ask any guy at Santa Clara who was on the team at that time, that's at least part of the discussion as far as great memories, favorite moments, fun one to watch and follow along
For
with for
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
And you got to go back. I mean, you stay connected with the guys, but back for the alumni game in February, right before everything
Yeah.
kind of got flipped on its head, February of this year. How'd you like getting back together with the guys and reconnecting for that?
I mean, that was awesome. I still keep in touch with a lot of guys. I live in the city now, San Francisco, so I see a lot of guys there, but there's still a good chunk of people who are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't seen you in so long. That's the best, I think. Just kind of catching up with a lot of guys over the years. I mean, I probably played with, I don't even know. I don't want to put a number on it. Hundreds of, like 100
Yeah.
guys, let's say, over the years. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe so and so is doing this or so and so. I don't know. It was awesome. And then just being able to hang around. I had to leave early, but it was a fun time.
Oh, and seeing a couple of guys that you played with that are still in the program now and that are going to be looking to come
Yeah.
back for the next season and when we get it going. What's the sense you get from the guys about how they're liking things as they finish up their careers?
I think it's just obviously there's been a lot of challenges, but for them, I think they just have fun with it. It's crazy that I think Freddie Erlinson is going back for his 7th year or 6th year, which is wild. That is wild to me. But good for him. I mean, they're still having fun with it and still killing it. It's just kind of like it's almost like a free season. Just go out and do it. No pressure. Have fun with it and go, which is awesome. I think that's a good way. That's how you have to play.
It's Mitch White of the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. Mitch, hey, great to catch up with you, man, and hope to chat again sometime soon. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
This has been another edition for Bronco Chat. Thanks for watching, everybody.